Host: how would you react if someone brazenly poured concrete over your family's legacy while you slept? What if I told you that nightmare happened to me, but they seriously underestimated who they were messing with? Stick around, because the story ends with me owning the very HOA that tried to crush my family's history. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. The guttural roar of heavy engines ripped me from sleep at 5:30 a.m. It wasn't just loud, it was close, vibrating right through my bedroom floorboards. My heart hammered against my ribs as I scrambled out of bed, shoving aside the curtains. What I saw sent a jolt of pure, cold panic through me. 5 massive concrete trucks idled ominously along the edge of my tomato field, their rotating drums churning like metallic beasts. Men in hard hats were already there, unfurling chutes, unleashing a torrent of thick, grey sludge onto my rich black soil. Soil my grandfather, my father, and I had lovingly cultivated for over 70 years. "Hey, stop that! Stop that right now!" I screamed, bursting out the back door in nothing but my worn flannel pajamas, not even pausing for shoes. The sharp gravel of the driveway bit into my bare feet, but the pain was nothing compared to the violation unfolding before my eyes. My land, my heritage, was being swallowed by concrete, meter by sickening meter. Standing imperiously beside the workers, clipboard in hand, was a woman with flawlessly coiffed blonde hair. Her bright fuchsia blazer looked like it cost more than I made in a month of selling produce. Karen Sterling. She'd moved into the sprawling new house in the adjacent upscale Willow Creek Estates just 8 months prior, and had immediately maneuvered herself into the HOA presidency. "Oh, good morning, farmer," she drawled, flashing a smile as artificial as plastic turf. "Beautiful day to improve the neighborhood, isn't it?" I could barely draw breath, rage and disbelief choking me. "What the hell are you doing on my property? This is private land." Karen's smile didn't waver. If anything, it widened, laced with condescension. "Actually," she said, tapping her clipboard, "this particular section falls under Willow Creek Estates jurisdiction now. We desperately need additional parking for our community pool. The grand opening is next month, you know." "That's impossible, Saga," I choked out, watching in numb horror as the concrete relentlessly smothered the very spot where this season's prize heirloom tomatoes should have been ripening. "My family has owned this entire 10 acres, free and clear, since 1951. She produced a document, smugly encased in a plastic sleeve. "The county approved our rezoning request last month. This quarter-acre is officially HOA property now. See the signature right here?" She pointed to a scrawl at the bottom. "I tried to notify you, David, but you simply never answer your phone or check your email." She was right. I hadn't checked either. Why? Because I was working from sunup to sundown, busting my hump, trying to keep my small family farm afloat against the crushing weight of the mega farms gobbling up everything around here. Just then, my neighbor, George Clark, who'd lived in his house for 30 years, long before the HOA even existed, jogged over, slowing his pace as he took in the scene. "What's going on, David?" he asked, confusion clouding his face. Before I could unleash the torrent of angry words building inside me, Karen interjected smoothly, "We're just finalizing the community improvement project, George. The one that was detailed in the newsletter? You voted for it at the last meeting, remember?" George looked bewildered. I thought we were just adding some park benches and maybe some flower beds." "An additional parking lot," Karen clarified, her voice silky smooth. It was all laid out clearly in the proposal. I noticed other neighbors gathering now, drawn by the commotion, watching from the safety of their pristine sidewalks. Some looked concerned, maybe even sympathetic, but nobody stepped forward. Nobody said a word in my defense. "This is theft! Blatant theft!" I finally managed, my voice shaking with a mixture of fury and helplessness. "I never signed anything. I never agreed to this land grab." Karen's smile finally evaporated, replaced by a look of icy disdain. "Listen," she snapped, her voice dropping the pretense of friendliness. "Your little hobby farm is an eyesore, and it's dragging down property values for everyone in Willow Creek. The board voted. It's done." She turned abruptly to the workers. "Continue, please." Defeated for the moment, I stumbled back towards my house, leaving muddy footprints across my porch, a stark contrast to the sterile grey consuming my field. My hands trembled violently as I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. When 2 officers finally arrived 20 minutes later, Karen was ready, armed with her official-looking paperwork. The younger officer gave it a cursory glance, then shifted his weight uncomfortably, avoiding my desperate gaze. "Seems like a civil matter, sir," he mumbled. "You'll need to take this up with the county." "But they're destroying my crops right now," I pleaded, pointing frantically towards the relentless spread of the concrete, which had now obliterated nearly the entire quarter-acre. "I can't halt legal construction if they have permits, sir," the officer replied stiffly. I couldn't help but notice his eyes flicking towards Karen's gleaming luxury SUV, where a county commissioner's official parking pass hung conspicuously from the rearview mirror. After the police drove away, leaving me utterly alone, Karen sauntered back over, now flanked by 3 other HOA board members, all dressed in expensive casual wear that screamed weekend money. "Look," she said, her voice now quieter, almost conspiratorial. "This is just progress, David." Her eyes swept dismissively over my weathered but sturdy barn and greenhouse. "Your farm is quaint," she conceded with a thin smile, "but it simply doesn't fit the vision for this neighborhood anymore. We are willing," she added, gesturing to the man beside her, "to make you an offer on the rest of your property." The man, introduced as Henry Jacobs, the HOA treasurer, chimed in, "It's a very generous offer, David, well above current market value." I stared at them, incredulous. A wave of nausea washed over me. "This farm," I said, my voice low but firm, "has been in my family for 3 generations. It's not for sale, not at any price." Karen's smile turned brittle, sharp as broken glass. "That's unfortunate," she said coldly, "because frankly, this is just the beginning. The HOA has a plethora of rules, you know, regulations about appropriate land use, noise levels, proper fencing." She thrust a thick, professionally printed binder into my hands. "I think you'll find you're currently in violation of at least 2 dozen of them. And that's a hefty $100 fine per violation per day." My blood ran cold. I watched them walk away, backs straight, heads held high, resuming their supervision of the destruction of my tomato field. As the last patch of black earth disappeared under the relentless grey tide, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter, away at college. "Dad, did you remember to deposit the tuition money for next semester? It's due Friday." I looked at my farm, my livelihood, my legacy, now visibly smaller, scarred and under imminent threat. A sickening dread filled my stomach. This wasn't just about a quarter-acre of land anymore. This was about my family's entire future, my income, my daughter's education. It was everything. That night, sleep was impossible. The image of concrete smothering my land was seared into my brain. I spread out the old property maps on the worn kitchen table. Yellowed, fragile papers my grandfather had meticulously preserved in his dusty filing cabinet. According to these original detailed surveys, there was absolutely no way that quarter acre belonged to anyone but the Miller family. I carefully photographed the maps with my phone. Then I hit the internet, searching for property rights lawyers. As I scrolled through listings, a notification pinged from the local community Facebook group. Someone had posted pictures of the concrete pour, praising the HOA for finally cleaning up that eyesore farm edge. The comments section was a cesspool of ignorance and spite. About time. That farm smell was awful in the summer. Finally, property values will definitely go up now. These were my neighbors, people who happily bought my fresh eggs and sweet corn all summer long. The betrayal stung sharp and deep. Just before midnight, my phone rang. It was Old Man Hemlock, a retired friend who'd served on the town council for years. "David," he said, his voice graveled with age and concern, "I just heard what happened down there. You need to know that HOA president, Karen Sterling, she's married to a big-shot developer, the CEO of Apex Development Group. They've been quietly buying up land all around the county. Rumor is they're planning a massive shopping mall complex next year, and your farm, well, it's sitting smack dab in the middle of their prime location." I thanked him numbly and hung up. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This was never about a damned parking lot. This was a calculated, aggressive move to break my spirit, to force me off my land, to make me sell my entire farm. I looked out the kitchen window, the moonlight glinting coldly off the freshly poured concrete where my vibrant tomato plants should have been reaching for the sky. They thought I was just some simple farmer they could bully, intimidate, and pave over. They made one colossal mistake. They didn't know that before I came home to take over the family farm, I'd spent 15 grueling years working as a sharp, successful real estate attorney in the city, and I still had every single one of my contacts, all my knowledge of the law's intricate loopholes and pathways, and most importantly, a stubborn streak a mile wide, inherited directly from my grandfather. A slow, determined fire began to burn in my gut. I picked up my phone and dialed Arthur Vance, hands down, the best, most tenacious property rights lawyer in the entire state. "Arthur," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside, "it's David Miller. I've got a war on my hands down here. I need your help, not just to save my farm. But when we're done, I want to own every square inch of that HOA that tried to steal my family's legacy." The following days were a blur of simmering rage and frantic action. How dare they? Pouring concrete on land nurtured by my family's sweat and dedication? The sheer audacity was breathtaking. When the police confirmed again it was a civil matter, the harsh reality hit me. I was completely on my own in this fight. "They can't just take your land, David," my friend Ben Carter exclaimed, his face grim as we stood staring helplessly at the ugly grey scar on my property. "There has to be something crooked about their paperwork." "I know," I nodded, clenching my fists, the anger a physical force inside me, "and I need to find the proof." My first move was to haul my grandfather's old wooden chest down from the attic. It smelled faintly of dust and pipe tobacco, a scent loaded with memories. Inside, amongst old letters and photographs, were the yellowed, brittle deed documents and original survey maps clearly delineating the farm's boundaries. Just as I remembered, that quarter-acre was unequivocally, undeniably mine. Next stop, the county records office. It was a labyrinth of filing cabinets, buzzing fluorescent lights, and overworked clerks. For 3 solid days, I immersed myself in dusty binders and microfilm, painstakingly tracing the property's history. Ms. Evelyn Peters, a kind-faced clerk nearing retirement, took pity on me and offered her assistance. "Look at this," she whispered conspiratorially on the 3rd afternoon, pointing to a faded document buried deep in a folder. The HOA filed for a special zoning permit 6 months ago. But look at the map they attached. It's an ancient survey from 1973. My heart leaped. But that survey was proven inaccurate. It was officially corrected and refiled in 1974 after my grandfather fought the county. Miss Peters nodded grimly. Exactly, which means someone had to know about both maps, the old incorrect one and the legally recognized corrected one, to pull this off deliberately. This wasn't just an error, it was calculated fraud. Armed with this crucial information, I met with Arthur Vance again. His small, unassuming office was plastered with photos of farms and small businesses he'd successfully defended against corporate giants. As he meticulously examined the documents, his bushy eyebrows knitted together in concentration. "They're trying to steal your land through blatant deception, David," Arthur declared, his voice tight with indignation, "and they're using dirty, underhanded tricks to do it." He quickly confirmed my suspicions. Karen Sterling had knowingly submitted the outdated, inaccurate 1973 map with her permit application, effectively slicing off my corner and annexing it to the HOA property on paper. "This system," Arthur stated firmly, "is completely illegal." Meanwhile, back at the farm, the harassment escalated dramatically. Every single day brought a new official-looking envelope from the HOA, $250 fine for improper storage of agricultural equipment, $500 fine for noise violation, keeping chickens, $750 fine for fence height exceeding regulation by 2 inches. The fines were piling up, designed to bleed me dry to make staying financially impossible. Worse still was the chilling change in my neighbors. People I'd known for years, shared coffee with, traded gardening tips with. They started acting strangely distant. Some avoided eye contact completely. Others literally crossed the street when they saw me coming. The isolation felt suffocating. Then, one evening, my neighbor Sarah Jenkins brought over a freshly baked apple pie, her expression troubled. "David, I'm so sorry about all this," she murmured, casting nervous glances around my yard. At the book club meeting, Karen told everyone your farm is drastically lowering property values. She claimed the whole neighborhood would soon be worthless because of, well, because of you. I was stunned. But that's not true. Property values have actually increased 7% this year. "I know," Sarah whispered, leaning closer. "But people are scared, David." Last month, the Miller family, no relation, questioned one of her spending proposals at an HOA meeting. Suddenly, bam! They were slapped with fines for their kid's basketball hoop, the color of their mailbox, even the type of petunias they planted in their front garden. She bullies anyone who dares to question her. Fueled by righteous anger, I decided to attend the next HOA meeting. It was held in the community center, the room packed with my neighbors sitting in unnervingly neat rows, their faces a mixture of apprehension and Karen-induced conformity. Karen Sterling stood at the front, radiating smug authority in a crisp navy suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. "And as you can clearly see from these photographs," she was saying, gesturing towards a slideshow displaying unflattering, deliberately skewed pictures of my farm, a slightly muddy patch near the barn, some tools leaning against a fence. "This eyesore is actively damaging our beautiful community. Property values have already dropped a staggering 15% since—" "That's a bald-faced lie." I stood up abruptly, my voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. Every head swiveled towards me. Karen's smile flickered, but didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excuse me? This farm was here long before any of your houses," I continued, my voice gaining strength. And I've checked the official county records. Property values in Willow Creek Estates have actually gone up 7% this year, not down. A flush crept up Karen's neck, staining her cheeks pink. Well, she sputtered, momentarily flustered, if they have gone up, it's despite your farm, not because of it. After the meeting dissolved into awkward murmurs, I noticed Henry Jacobs, the HOA treasurer, the same man who'd stood beside Karen offering to buy my land, looking distinctly uncomfortable, avoiding Karen's triumphant gaze. I caught up with him in the dimly lit parking lot. "Henry," I said quietly, "what's really going on here? Why is Karen so hell-bent on taking my land?" He glanced around nervously, his eyes darting towards the community center door, then motioned me closer to his sedan. I really shouldn't be telling you this, David," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "But Karen, she cut a side deal with Apex Development Group, that big developer. They want your entire property for a shopping mall." My stomach plummeted. "The whole farm?" Henry nodded miserably. "She gets a massive commission. 6 figures if she delivers the property, cleared and ready. That's why she started with that corner piece, to break your spirit, make you think fighting is futile. She's even been—" He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "She's been dipping into the HOA emergency fund to pay her legal fees for this fight against you." That night, unable to sleep, I watched from my darkened kitchen window as Karen hosted a lavish party in her sprawling backyard. All the HOA board members were there, sipping expensive wine, laughing too loudly under the glow of patio lanterns. I saw how she expertly worked the crowd, touching arms, leaning in close to whisper things that made them nod agreeably. It was a performance of manipulation. Restless, the next morning, I paid a visit to Mr. Abernathy, my elderly neighbor, whose family had lived on this road even longer than mine. Over steaming mugs of tea in his sun-drenched kitchen, he reminisced. "Oh, I remember clear as day when your grandfather fought the county over those very property lines," he chuckled, his wrinkled hands wrapped around the warm mug. "Back in '73, they tried to pull a fast one, say he didn't own that back corner, but your grandpa, he was a fighter. He proved them wrong in '74, got the official maps redrawn and certified. Everything." My pulse quickened. "Mr. Abernathy, do you happen to still have any paperwork from back then?" He shuffled slowly out to his meticulously organized garage and, after a few moments of rummaging, pulled out a dusty but intact filing cabinet. "I keep everything," he declared proudly, handing me a faded manila folder labeled Property Line Dispute, 1974. Inside, tucked between official correspondences, was a brittle, yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local Farmer Wins Boundary Dispute Against County." And there it was, a direct quote from the presiding judge, unequivocally stating that the corner acreage in question belonged to the Miller farm. Now and in perpetuity. I nearly wept with relief. When I showed the article to Arthur Vance, a wide grin spread across his face. "This is the smoking gun, David. This proves beyond any doubt that Karen Sterling knew about the corrected 1974 maps and deliberately, fraudulently, used the old invalid 1973 ones. That afternoon, I was working in my greenhouse, trying to salvage what little peace I could find amidst the chaos, when a deafening roar shattered the quiet. I looked up, my blood running cold. A massive bulldozer was rumbling across the edge of my property, heading directly towards my historic barn, with Karen Sterling walking alongside it like a conquering general. I sprinted out, waving my arms frantically. "Stop! Get off my property! You can't do this!" Karen merely smirked, cold and unflinching. "Actually, David, according to our latest survey, commissioned just this morning, This dilapidated barn is encroaching 3 feet onto HOA common property. It's a safety hazard. It needs to come down immediately. Heart pounding, I planted myself directly in the path of the giant machine. "I have proof that you are using fraudulent maps," I yelled, my voice ringing with newfound confidence. "I know about your dirty deal with Apex Development Group. I know about the kickbacks." For a fleeting second, Karen's mask of composure slipped. I saw a flicker of genuine fear, maybe even panic, in her eyes. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by sharp, derisive laughter. "You can't stop progress, farmer. By next month, this whole pitiful farm will be paved over." She turned to the bulldozer driver, who looked increasingly uneasy. "Proceed." The driver hesitated, looking from Karen's furious face to mine. Should I keep going, ma'am?" This was my chance. I whipped out my phone, holding it up high. "Before you make that potentially career-ending decision," I announced, my voice loud and clear, "you should know that I am recording this entire exchange, and I have concrete evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and illegal demolition attempts. Do you really want to be named as a co-conspirator in that lawsuit?" The driver immediately switched off the engine. "Whoa, hey, I'm just doing my job here," he stammered, holding up his hands. "But I don't want any part of legal trouble." Karen's face contorted into a mask of pure fury. "You will regret this, Miller," she hissed, stabbing a finger towards me. "The HOA has more resources, more power than you can possibly imagine. We will bury you in so many legal fees, you'll be begging us to buy you out." As she stormed off in a huff, I noticed several neighbors had emerged from their houses, drawn by the confrontation. But this time, something was different. They weren't looking at me with suspicion or pity. They were staring open-mouthed at Karen's retreating, furious figure. I didn't fully realize it then, but that tense standoff, that moment of defiance in front of the bulldozer, was the turning point. I finally had hard evidence of her lies and her connection to the developers. But stopping her completely would require something bigger, something bolder. And I was about to uncover just how deep her web of corruption truly went. Continue. That night was another sleepless one. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that monstrous bulldozer inches from my barn, heard Karen's venomous threats. But mixed with the fear was a growing resolve. The image of my grandparents, their faces smiling down from the old photographs on the farmhouse mantelpiece, seemed to strengthen my determination. "This ends now," I whispered into the pre-dawn stillness. Their legacy wouldn't be erased by greed. First thing Monday morning, energized by coffee and righteous fury, I marched into the county courthouse. I filed for an emergency injunction to immediately halt any further construction or demolition activity related to my property line. The clerk who processed my paperwork looked at me with newfound sympathy as I presented the photos of the already poured concrete and the 1974 newspaper article. "They did this without proper permits, using falsified documents," I explained, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me, "and I have undeniable proof." While waiting anxiously for the judge to review my urgent request, I met Arthur Vance at a small coffee shop strategically located across the street from Karen Sterling's flashy real estate office. Through the large plate glass window, I could see her inside, laughing animatedly on the phone, probably boasting to someone about how she was about to bulldoze my eyesore at farm into oblivion. The sight fueled my anger. "The HOA's finances are an absolute disaster," Arthur reported grimly, sliding a thick folder across the chipped Formica table. "They're currently over $430,000 in debt, largely thanks to that ridiculously overpriced, unnecessary clubhouse Karen strong-armed the board into approving last year. Many homeowners are really struggling, even facing foreclosure, because of the exorbitant fee increases she pushed through to cover her spending. I stared at the damning numbers, then back at Karen, still laughing carelessly through the window. How is she still in charge? How does she get away with this? Fear, Arthur replied succinctly. Pure and simple. She threatens anyone who questions her authority, with crippling fines, property liens, even frivolous lawsuits. Most ordinary folks can't afford the time, money, or emotional toll of fighting back. But I could. My farm, though modest, generated a decent income. More importantly, I had inheritance funds I'd been carefully saving, planning to expand my apple orchard. Now I had a much better, much more critical use for that money. An audacious idea began to form in my mind. Arthur, I said slowly, leaning forward, what if I started buying properties within Willow Creek Estates? Arthur's eyes widened slightly. You mean gain controlling interest? To overrule her? David, that would require owning at least 51% of the properties with voting rights. Let's start, I said, my resolve hardening, with the homes currently facing foreclosure because of her outrageous fines and mismanagement. We offer them a fair price, maybe even let them stay on as renters with reasonable terms. Within 2 intense weeks, operating through a newly formed discrete LLC, limited liability company, we quietly purchased 4 houses from desperate homeowners on the brink of losing everything thanks to Karen's financial tyranny. Each property came with HOA voting rights, rights that I now controlled. Predictably, Karen, likely sensing a shift in the wind, or perhaps just doubling down, intensified her attacks on me personally. She started sending town inspectors to my farm almost daily. Suddenly, my perfectly legal chicken coop was cited for violating obscure noise ordinances. My trusty tractor, parked where it always was deemed too dirty to be visible from the road. The harassment was petty, relentless, and clearly orchestrated. One evening, as dusk settled, I spotted Karen walking along the edge of my property line, the correct property line, with a man in an impeccably tailored, expensive suit. They pointed towards my barn, then gestured towards the orchard, nodding in agreement. I instantly recognized the man from regional business articles, the CEO of Apex Development Group, the very company Old Man Hemlock had warned me about. Pretending to inspect my irrigation system near the fence line, I edged closer, straining to overhear their conversation. Once we get him out, the CEO was saying smoothly, we can break ground on the shopping center by fall. The anchor store is already fully committed. Karen smiled, a predatory glint in her eyes. I've got another board vote scheduled for next week. We'll officially declare his barn a safety hazard and order its immediate demolition. Excellent, the CEO replied coolly, and your commission will be wired the moment we close on the land. My hands shook, but not just with anger this time. With the thrill of the catch, I discreetly pulled out my phone and hit record, capturing their damning exchange. This wasn't just about a parking lot or property lines anymore. This was concrete proof of a conspiracy to defraud me of my entire farm. That night, I didn't just rely on lawyers. I activated my community network. I called everyone I knew who regularly bought produce from me at the farmers market over the years. Many owned homes in Willow Creek or nearby neighborhoods. I explained the situation, the fraud, the developer deal, the bullying tactics, and asked them to help spread the word quietly among trusted neighbors. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, the one Karen intended to use to condemn my barn, my LLC had stealthily acquired controlling interest in 11 properties, just enough, 51%, for majority voting rights according to the HOA's own bylaws. The community center buzzed with an unusual tension. Karen, oblivious, stood at the podium, radiating confidence in another power suit, clicking through her biased slideshow. "As you can clearly see," she announced to the crowded room, "this deteriorating agricultural eyesore continues to negatively impact our property values and poses a significant safety risk. Therefore, the board has determined that the historic barn must be removed immediately for the community's well-being." Several neighbors nodded dutifully, conditioned by fear. Others looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. Karen had trained them well. "All in favor of ordering the immediate demolition of the hazardous structure, please raise your hands," she declared, already smiling in anticipation of her victory. Hands started to go up, hesitantly at first, then more confidently. I remained calm, seated near the back, watching the scene unfold. Suddenly, the main doors swung open with authority. Arthur Vance strode in, accompanied by a uniformed court official. "This meeting is hereby adjourned," Arthur announced, his powerful voice filling the abruptly silent room. "We have obtained evidence of significant financial impropriety, fraudulent land surveys, and potential conspiracy that require immediate investigation by the authorities." Karen's triumphant smile vanished, replaced by confusion, then dawning horror. She gripped the podium, her knuckles turning white. You can't just barge in here. This is a private meeting. Who do you think you are?" Slowly, deliberately, I stood up. All eyes in the room swiveled towards me. I said, my voice clear and steady, resonating with the authority I now legally possessed, am the person who now holds controlling interest in the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. The room erupted. People gasped, shouted questions, turned to whisper frantically to each other. Karen's face turned a frightening shade of crimson. "That's impossible. That's absurd. You're lying," she shrieked. Arthur calmly walked forward and handed her a legal document. "My client's LLC," he stated formally, "now owns 11 properties within this development, granting him precisely 51% of the voting rights, as stipulated under your own bylaws, Section 7, Paragraph 2. As Karen stared at the document, her hands trembling uncontrollably, I walked steadily towards the front of the room. "You've been running this neighborhood like your own personal fiefdom," I addressed her, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. "Using fake property maps to steal my family's land, taking illegal kickbacks from developers, jacking up fees to exorbitant levels to push vulnerable people out of their homes while you embezzled funds." Suddenly, Henry Jacobs, the treasurer, shot to his feet, his face pale but resolute. "It's true," he admitted, pointedly avoiding Karen's murderous glare. "It's all true. She's been systematically moving money from the Community Maintenance Fund into a secret personal account. When I questioned her about it, she threatened to ruin my credit score, destroy my reputation." Karen lunged towards me, her face contorted with rage, pointing a shaking finger just inches from my face. "You think you've won, you pathetic dirt farmer? My husband is on the county zoning board. My brother works for the very bank that holds your farm mortgage. You're nothing." Before she could escalate further, 2 discreet security guards Arthur had wisely hired stepped forward as her voice rose to a hysterical shriek. "You can't do this. This is my neighborhood. Get your hands off me." As they firmly escorted the still screaming, threatening Karen Sterling out of the community center, I turned to face my stunned, silent neighbors. "Listen, everyone," I said honestly, my voice softening slightly. "I never wanted to buy these properties. I just wanted to grow my vegetables, raise my chickens, and mind my own damn business. But I couldn't just stand by and watch her bully and defraud everyone here just to line her own pockets." Evelyn Hayes, a kind woman who lived across the street and had always offered a friendly wave, stood up, her voice trembling slightly. "So, What happens now, David? I looked around the room, at all the faces, some familiar friends from years of shared community life, others strangers who had moved in more recently under Karen's reign. They looked scared, confused, uncertain. But underneath, I saw a flicker of hope. Now, I declared, feeling a surge of purpose, we rebuild this community, together, the right way. Starting tomorrow by tearing up that disgusting concrete parking lot she illegally poured on my land and turning it back into something beautiful, something that benefits everyone. As murmurs of tentative agreement and excitement began to spread through the room, my phone buzzed. A text from Arthur. Karen just made a frantic call to her developer contact. Brace yourself, things are about to get ugly. I looked up at my neighbors who were now starting to smile, talking animatedly about community gardens, fair fees, and holding corrupt officials accountable. They had no idea what kind of storm was likely still coming. I woke the next morning, not to the roar of engines, but to the incessant, frantic buzzing of my phone. 12 missed calls, 37 text messages, all variations on the same theme. Karen Sterling had been spotted frantically packing her luxury SUV in the dead of night. She was gone. Had she skipped town before facing the music? I leaped out of bed, throwing on clothes. No way was I letting her simply vanish after the destruction she'd wrought. As I headed downstairs, the local morning news was blaring from the kitchen TV. Breaking news! The controversial president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA has reportedly disappeared amidst serious allegations of embezzlement and fraud. The reporter was standing right in front of Karen's now conspicuously empty McMansion. My heart simultaneously sank and soared. Just then, my doorbell rang insistently. It was Evelyn Hayes from across the street, clutching her bathrobe, slippers on her feet, eyes wide. "David, did you see? She's gone. Skipped town," Evelyn breathed. "After what you revealed at the meeting last night, showing everyone those documents proving you own the majority now, I have never seen Karen Sterling look so utterly terrified." Wasting no time, I called for an emergency HOA board meeting that very afternoon. This time, the community center wasn't just packed, it was overflowing. Everyone wanted answers. Some faces still looked worried, others were openly angry, but many held a tangible sense of hopeful anticipation. Standing at the front, clutching my hastily scribbled notes, my hands trembled slightly. "I know many of you are confused, concerned, and probably angry," I began, my voice projecting across the room. "But today marks a new beginning for Willow Creek Estates. Using my legally acquired majority ownership, I am calling for an immediate vote to dissolve the current board and hold new elections, effective immediately." Henry Jacobs, the treasurer, who had bravely spoken out, quickly stood up. "I second that motion," he declared firmly, "and I have something else to add." He held up a thick folder, filled with spreadsheets and bank statements. "These are the detailed financial records Karen Sterling fought tooth and nail to keep hidden. They clearly show she's been systematically embezzling our maintenance fees, funneling them directly into her personal offshore bank account for years." Gasps rippled through the room. A woman in the back jumped up, shouting, "That's why our community pool has been broken all summer. She kept saying there weren't funds for repairs." The vote was swift and unanimous. A new interim board was elected, with me reluctantly agreeing to serve as president until permanent rules and leadership could be established. My very first official action, hiring a highly recommended forensic accountant to conduct a deep dive into every single penny of HOA finances for the past 5 years. The results, delivered a week later, were staggering. "You won't believe the extent of this," the accountant told me, pushing a thick stack of irrefutable evidence across my kitchen table. Karen wasn't just skimming routine fees. She was receiving massive, illegal kickbacks from Apex Development Group. We've traced over $75,000 so far, specifically tied to her efforts to acquire your farmland for their proposed mini-mall. Armed with this mountain of evidence, the fraudulent maps, the embezzlement proof, the recorded conversation, the kickback trail, I went directly to the county police department. This time they listened intently. A formal criminal investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy was immediately opened. The local newspaper splashed the story across its front page. HOA president flees amidst explosive fraud allegations. Local farmer takes control. Suddenly, many of the same neighbors who had previously sided with Karen or stayed fearfully silent started approaching me, offering apologies. "David, I am so terribly sorry," stammered Mrs. Jenkins, Sarah's mother, her eyes glistening with tears. "Karen fed us so many lies, told us your farm was ruining our investments. She even showed us falsified property value reports. I should have questioned it. I should have checked for myself." Even grumpy Mr. Williams, who lived 2 streets over and rarely spoke to anyone, stopped me at the local grocery store. "That concrete they poured on your land," he mumbled, looking down at his shoes. "It just wasn't right. What can I do to help make it right?" That's when the idea sparked. A community restoration day. The following Saturday, an incredible 50 neighbors showed up at the edge of my field, armed with sledgehammers, pickaxes, shovels, and work gloves. It was an amazing sight. Together, shoulder to shoulder, we began the immensely satisfying work of breaking up that ugly, intrusive slab of concrete, piece by stubborn piece. Kids brought their little toy shovels and wheelbarrows. Teenagers, I'd previously thought were permanently glued to their phones, worked tirelessly under the hot sun, hauling away chunks of debris. The soil underneath is badly compacted and contaminated, I explained to the group during a water break. It'll need significant remediation, special amendments, and time to heal before it can really grow anything healthy again. "We'll help, David," Evelyn Hayes promised immediately, echoed by a chorus of agreement. "Whatever it takes." And so the vision was born. We decided to transform that violated section of land not back into my private tomato patch, but into a thriving community garden, complete with raised beds accessible for everyone. In Willow Creek Estates, to grow their own fresh vegetables and flowers. People who'd never held a trowel in their lives were suddenly asking me for tips on composting and companion planting. A sense of shared purpose, of healing, began to take root. Just when things were finally starting to feel positive, truly hopeful, a certified letter arrived in my mailbox. My hands trembled slightly as I tore it open. Karen Sterling had been located and apprehended in a neighboring town. She was out on bail, and she was suing me for infliction of emotional distress and orchestrating an illegal and hostile takeover of a properly established homeowners association. Her high-powered attorney was demanding $2 million in damages. Can she possibly be serious? Arthur Vance wondered aloud, frowning as we reviewed the ludicrous lawsuit later that day. "After everything she's demonstrably done." "Arthur," I sighed, rubbing my temples, "people like Karen Sterling genuinely believe the rules simply don't apply to them. They never stop." That evening, exhausted but needing to check on the newly installed drip irrigation in the fledgling community garden area, I walked out towards my barn as twilight deepened. I froze. Spray-painted across the weathered wooden barn doors, in huge, dripping letters of garish bright red, were the words, "This isn't over." My blood ran cold. I called Sheriff Brody immediately. He arrived quickly, photographed the vandalism, and shook his head grimly. "This looks like her work, David. Matches the style of some protest signs she made last year. We'll add vandalism and intimidation to her growing list of charges." He strongly suggested upgrading my security. Motion sensor lights, maybe even cameras. I lunged for Max, a desperate attempt to shield him, to protect him from the impending danger, but I was too slow, too late. The shot echoed through the quiet morning like a crack of thunder, a deafening explosion that shattered the fragile peace. Max's yelp of pain, a sharp, heart-wrenching cry, shattered my world into a million jagged pieces. My brave, loyal, gentle partner collapsed onto our freshly cut grass, his beautiful golden fur staining a horrifying crimson, the color of blood, of violence, of betrayal. His self-defense. Catherine shrieked, still filming, her voice a mixture of triumph and panic. "We all saw it. The dog was aggressive." But her voice faltered, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, as other neighbors, drawn by the commotion, began emerging from their homes, their phones raised, capturing the truth, the undeniable reality of what had just happened. I cradled Max's head in my lap, my hands trembling, my training, my years of experience, kicking in, keeping me clear-headed enough to apply pressure to his wound, to try to stem the flow of blood. His brown eyes, those soulful, trusting eyes, looked up at me, full of unwavering love, even now, even in the face of such unimaginable pain. Sirens wailed in the distance, a growing chorus of urgency. Someone had called 911. Someone had witnessed the horror. My hands shook violently as I pulled out my phone, pressing the emergency contact I'd hoped I'd never need, the direct line to my chief of staff. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper, choked with emotion. "It's James. They shot him, Sarah. They actually shot my dog." "Sir?" she replied, her voice urgent, sharp, cutting through the fog of my shock. "You need to turn on the news, right now. Someone posted a video of the shooting on social media. It's everywhere. It's gone viral." I pulled out my tablet, my fingers fumbling with the screen, and clicked the first news link she sent. There it was, the horrifying truth, displayed for the world to see. Shaky phone footage from my neighbor's second-story window, capturing everything. Tom with his gun, Catherine screaming about property values, and Max's heart-wrenching yelp, the sound that would forever haunt my nightmares. The video had over 1 million views already, a testament to the power of social media, the instantaneous spread of information. The emergency room doors burst open, and Brenda stormed in, her designer handbag swinging wildly as she waved her phone in my face, her perfectly made-up face now pale, her mascara slightly smeared, a picture of unraveling composure. "Oh, you're him. You're actually him," she stammered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. "You're Congressman Montgomery." I stood up slowly, drawing myself to my full height. The years of keeping my identity private, of living a quiet, unassuming life in their community crumbling around me. "Yes, Brenda," I said, my voice cold and hard, devoid of any warmth. "I am. And you and your husband just shot a congressionally protected service animal, and it was all caught on video, broadcast for the world to see." She stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a chair, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. But you never said anything. You let us think you were just another homeowner, another ordinary resident." "I wanted to live quietly, Brenda," I replied, my voice laced with a bitter irony, "to work on my housing reform bill, to make a difference without drawing unnecessary attention. I chose your community, Oak Haven Estates, because the listing promised peaceful living, a tranquil environment. Instead, you, your husband, and Catherine harassed a disabled veteran and his service animal for months, relentlessly, cruelly, all because of your obsession with superficial appearances and inflated property values. Catherine burst through the doors next, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, anger, fear, and a dawning realization of the magnitude of their actions. "This is a trick," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "He's lying, it's all a conspiracy." But her voice lacked its usual conviction, faltering when she saw the news playing silently on the waiting room TV. My official congressional photo displayed next to the horrifying footage of the shooting. My phone buzzed again, a relentless barrage of messages flooding in, from other members of Congress, from the media, from veteran groups, from disability advocates, from ordinary citizens outraged by what they had witnessed. Justice for Max was trending nationwide, a testament to the power of public outrage. The young vet tech who'd taken Max back, her scrub stained with his blood, a stark reminder of the violence he'd endured, appeared, her face etched with concern. I rushed to her, my heart pounding in my chest, a desperate plea for good news. Brenda and Catherine fell silent, their bravado evaporating, probably realizing finally just how much trouble they were in, the magnitude of the consequences they faced. "He's stable," the vet tech said softly, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "The bullet missed his vital organs miraculously, but he'll need surgery, extensive surgery. Dr. Peterson wants to talk to you about the procedure, the risks, the recovery." Relief flooded through me, a wave of gratitude washing over me, but it was quickly followed by a surge of anger, a burning fury directed at the people who had caused this, who had inflicted this pain on my loyal companion. I turned to Brenda and Catherine, who were now huddled together near the exit, their faces pale, their carefully constructed facades shattered. "I've spent the last year working tirelessly on housing reform legislation," I said, my voice low and controlled, but laced with steel. "But now I'm adding specific provisions, very specific provisions, about service animals and HOA oversight, holding them accountable for their actions. Your actions, your cruelty, just became Exhibit A in congressional hearings. Your blatant disregard for the law, for basic human decency, will now be used to enact real, lasting change." Catherine's face crumpled, her carefully maintained composure dissolving into tears. "But our property values, our community standards," she wailed, her voice a desperate plea. "Your property values?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Check your real estate apps, Catherine. News travels fast, especially in the digital age. Houses in Oakhaven Estates are already being listed below market value. Turns out, shooting a congressman's service dog, a beloved companion, isn't exactly great for the neighborhood's reputation, is it?" Brenda grabbed her phone, frantically scrolling through Zillow, her gasp, a sharp intake of breath, telling me she'd seen the plummeting prices, the devastating impact of their actions on their precious community. "We can fix this," she pleaded, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with desperation. "We'll drop all the complaints, every single one. We'll pay all of Max's vet bills. Every penny, just please make this go away." "It's too late," I said, pulling out a folder from my briefcase, a meticulously compiled dossier of their transgressions. "This," I said, holding up the folder, "is what justice looks like." Inside were copies of every harassing letter they'd sent, every fabricated complaint, photos of my vandalized garden, recordings of their discriminatory HOA meetings, a mountain of evidence documenting their relentless campaign of harassment. The FBI is already investigating. Service animal interference, you see, is a federal crime, Brenda, a serious offense. The vet tech returned, her expression serious but calm. "Sir, Dr. Peterson is prepped and ready for you whenever you are." I gathered my things, preparing to go back and see Max, my loyal companion, the one who had endured so much. I watched Brenda sink into a chair, her face buried in her hands, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Catherine was still frozen, staring blankly at her phone as angry comments, a torrent of outrage, flooded the HOA's social media pages, a digital testament to their downfall. As I walked through the doors to see Max, to be with him during this critical time, I heard Brenda whisper, her voice barely audible, "What have we done?" My hand rested on the door handle, a cold, metallic touch, and I looked back one last time, my gaze lingering on the two women who had caused so much pain, so much suffering. "You tried to destroy my life, to hurt my dog, because you thought I was powerless, insignificant, just another homeowner you could bully and intimidate. Now," I said, my voice resonating with a newfound strength, "you get to learn what real power looks like. The power of the law you so casually, so arrogantly disregarded." The next few hours would be a blur of activity, a whirlwind of decisions and updates. But right now, at this very moment, all that mattered was Max, my faithful companion, my battle buddy. As I stepped through those doors, into the sterile, antiseptic environment of the veterinary clinic, I couldn't help but wonder, would saving him, would achieving justice for him, cost me everything I'd worked for in Congress? Or would this become the defining moment of my career, the catalyst for real, lasting change? The morning news vans, a pack of hungry wolves, lined our once quiet, serene street like vultures, their cameras poised, their reporters eager for a soundbite, a glimpse of the unfolding drama. I watched from my window as Catherine Martin paced her front lawn, her perfectly toned legs clad in her designer yoga pants, desperately trying to shoo away the relentless reporters while clutching her phone to her ear, a picture of frantic desperation. The look of panic on her face, the stark contrast to her usual smug, entitled expression, was a small, bitter satisfaction. Max's blood, a stark reminder of their cruelty, hadn't even dried on my back patio, and already their perfect, meticulously crafted world was crumbling, disintegrating around them. My phone buzzed again. Another text message from Sarah, my ever-vigilant chief of staff. The story had reached national headlines, dominating the news cycle. Congressman service dog shot by HOA board member. Social media was exploding with fury, a digital firestorm of outrage and condemnation. I clicked through Twitter, watching the security camera footage I'd released, the footage that laid bare their cruelty, go viral. The clear audio of Catherine screaming about property values just seconds before Tom fired the shot, a damning indictment, was playing on repeat. A testament to their callous disregard for the law, for basic human decency. No amount of spin, no carefully crafted PR campaign could save them now. A knock at my door, a hesitant rap, made Max whimper from his bed, his bandaged side a constant, painful reminder of what they'd done, the violence they'd inflicted. Through the peephole, I saw Brenda, her usual perfectly styled hair now disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, a picture of utter despair. I opened the door just enough to hear her stammered plea, her voice choked with emotion. "Congressman Montgomery, please. We can work something out. We didn't know who you were." Catherine. She was just trying to protect our community standards. Tom made a terrible mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. What will it take? What will it take to keep this quiet? I felt a cold smile spread across my face, a mirthless expression devoid of any warmth. Protect community standards? Let me show you something, Brenda. I pulled out my tablet, opening the file my team had painstakingly compiled, a digital archive of their transgressions. Here's every HOA violation notice issued in Oakhaven Estates for the past 5 years, a comprehensive record of your community standards. Notice anything strange about who received them, Brenda? Her face went even paler, if that was possible, as I scrolled through the data, the undeniable evidence of their systematic discrimination. Every single complaint about pets, about yard maintenance, about community standards had been filed against minorities, against disabled residents, against elderly homeowners on fixed incomes. The pattern was impossible to ignore, a blatant display of prejudice and abuse of power. This isn't just about Max anymore, Brenda, I said quietly, my voice devoid of any emotion. While you were busy harassing my service dog, my office was investigating HOA abuse across the country, a systemic problem that has gone unchecked for far too long. Oakhaven Estates, your precious, perfect community, just became Exhibit A, the poster child for everything that's wrong with unchecked HOA power. A commotion down the street, a sudden surge of noise caught our attention. Catherine was now screaming at a reporter who had dared to step onto her meticulously manicured lawn, her voice shrill and desperate. You don't understand. Property values are everything. We can't have dogs running around. It attracts the wrong kind of people. The reporter's camera, a silent, impartial witness, captured every word, every desperate, bigoted utterance. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. The housing reform bill I'd been quietly, diligently working on for months. The bill that had languished in committee, facing an uphill battle, was suddenly gaining massive, bipartisan support. Colleagues who'd been on the fence, hesitant to take a stand, were now calling to co-sponsor, eager to be associated with the cause. Funny, I thought, how a viral video of HOA abuse of a congressman's service dog being shot in cold blood could change political winds, could shift the balance of power. Brenda was still standing there, trembling, her body racked with sobs. What do you want from us?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I handed her a thick envelope, a weighty document that held their fate in its pages. "Here's your chance to do the right thing, Brenda. A small chance." Inside was my proposal, a meticulously crafted plan for a complete overhaul of Oakhaven Estates' governance. New board elections, immediate and transparent, third-party oversight, mandatory civil rights training for all board members, a complete dismantling of their carefully constructed system of power and control. Sign it, Brenda. Sign it now. Or I'll add your blatant, documented discrimination data to my congressional testimony next week. Your choice. She snatched the envelope, her hands shaking so badly she could barely open it, her fingers fumbling with the pages. Behind her, I saw Tom being led out of his house in handcuffs, his face ashen, his eyes filled with a dawning realization of the consequences of his actions. The police had finally arrived to arrest him for animal cruelty and reckless discharge of a firearm, a small measure of justice in the face of such senseless violence. Catherine was now crying into her phone, probably calling her lawyer, desperately seeking a way out of the mess she'd created. Max, my loyal companion, limped to my side, his tail wagging weakly, his unwavering trust a constant source of strength. I scratched behind his ears, remembering all the nights he'd helped me through my PTSD episodes, his gentle presence a shield against the darkness. "How dare they, I thought, how dare they try to take him from me, to inflict such pain on such an innocent, loving creature? A new text message lit up my phone. Photos from a resident, a brave soul who had finally found the courage to speak out, showing years of HOA documents being shredded in Brenda's garage last night. A desperate, futile attempt to destroy the evidence, to erase their crimes. More evidence for the investigation, more fuel for the fire. The house of cards, their carefully constructed world of lies and deceit, was falling faster than they could possibly cover their tracks. Protesters started gathering at the community entrance, a growing crowd holding signs with Max's picture, demanding justice. Their voices a chorus of outrage. Local news crews interviewed residents who'd been silenced by HOA threats for years, their stories finally being heard, their voices amplified by the national attention. One elderly woman wept as she described being fined into near bankruptcy for having a wheelchair ramp, a necessary accommodation for her disability. A Latino family showed documentation of being cited for cooking odors from their traditional family meals, a blatant display of cultural insensitivity and prejudice. Brenda's hand trembled as she signed the documents, each signature a reluctant admission of guilt, a surrender of power. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "My husband. He's on the city council. This will ruin us." I took the papers, checking each signature, ensuring that every detail was correct. "You should have thought of that, Brenda," I said, my voice cold and unforgiving, "before you decided to shoot a congressman's service dog, before you engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and discrimination. But don't worry," I added, a hint of bitter irony in my voice, "you'll have plenty of time to think about it, to reflect on your actions during the federal investigation." As she hurried away, her shoulders slumped in defeat, I saw Catherine being interviewed on live television, still desperately trying to defend herself, to spin the narrative, to portray herself as the victim. "I had no idea he was in Congress," she insisted, her voice shrill and unconvincing. "We just wanted to maintain our standards. Dogs reduce property values by 15%. It's a fact." The reporter, a seasoned journalist, cut her off, his voice firm and unwavering. "Ma'am, are you aware that discriminating against service animals is a federal crime, regardless of the owner's position, regardless of your so-called community standards?" I closed my door, shutting out the noise, the chaos, the relentless media scrutiny. I sat down heavily next to Max, my loyal companion, my furry friend. My phone kept buzzing, a constant barrage of calls from major networks, from other members of Congress, from disability rights organizations, a testament to the national outrage sparked by their cruelty. Tomorrow, I'd deal with it all. Tomorrow, I'd start turning this nightmare, this personal tragedy, into real, lasting change, into legislation that would protect others from the abuses of power I'd endured. But tonight, watching through my window, as karma, swift and merciless, did its work, I held Max close, my hand gently stroking his fur, and whispered, "We got them, buddy. We finally got them." Outside, another news van pulled up, its satellite dish reaching towards the sky, and I couldn't help but wonder how many other HOAs across America, how many other petty tyrants hiding behind the guise of community standards were about to face their own day of reckoning, their own moment of truth. The doctor said Max might never walk the same way again, that his gait might be permanently altered, but they didn't know my dog's spirit, his unwavering resilience. I watched him, my heart swelling with pride and love, take his first shaky, hesitant steps in our living room. His golden fur, still patchy from the surgery, the scars a permanent reminder of the violence he'd endured. The news vans outside had finally left, their insatiable hunger for drama temporarily sated, but the damage to Oakhaven Estates, to their carefully constructed facade of perfection, was permanent, irreparable. Every time Max flinched at a loud noise, a sudden movement, my heart broke all over again, a fresh wave of anger washing over me. Catherine Martin's perfect world, the world she'd so fiercely defended, was crumbling, disintegrating around her. I heard she had tried to sell her house to escape the consequences of her actions, but nobody wanted to buy from the woman who had helped shoot a congressman's service dog, the woman who had become a national symbol of HOA abuse. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. A constant stream of messages from other representatives and senators expressing their support, their outrage, asking about Max, offering their assistance. The story had struck a nerve, resonating across the country, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of those who rely on service animals, the constant threat of discrimination they face. Last week, I caught Catherine trying to sneak into my backyard with her phone, probably looking for something, anything to complain about, some new fabricated violation to report. But this time, I was ready. The upgraded security cameras I'd installed, my silent, ever-vigilant guardians, caught everything, including her pathetic attempt to plant fake evidence of dog waste, a desperate, transparent attempt at retaliation. The police, alerted to her continued harassment, weren't as friendly to her this time, their patience worn thin by her relentless campaign of lies and deceit. Brenda, our former HOA president, the woman who had ruled Oakhaven Estates with an iron fist, sent me a letter, a handwritten plea for forgiveness, begging to meet, to explain everything, to somehow make it right. I read her letter twice, carefully considering her words, before letting Max use it as a chew toy. A small, symbolic act of defiance. Their fake apologies, their belated attempts at remorse, meant nothing. I had uncovered years of their dirty work, their systematic campaign of harassment and discrimination, a pattern of abuse that could no longer be ignored. Other homeowners, emboldened by my actions, by the national attention the case had garnered, started coming forward, sharing their own stories, their own experiences of how Brenda and Catherine had targeted elderly residents, single parents, and minorities with made-up violations, with fines and threats, all in the name of maintaining their precious community standards. The media, hungry for more details, dug deeper into our HOA's history, uncovering a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. They found recordings of board meetings where Catherine bragged about forcing a young widow to sell her house because her crying baby was deemed a nuisance, a blatant violation of basic human decency. Brenda had written emails, arrogant and unapologetic, about keeping certain people out of the neighborhood to protect our values, their own words becoming their worst enemy, a testament to their prejudice and bigotry. My team discovered that Tom, Brenda's husband, the man who had shot Max, had been lying about his security credentials for years. He had never had a license to carry a firearm, as the HOA's self-proclaimed security coordinator, a blatant violation of the law. The police, armed with this new information, were very interested in that detail, adding another layer of charges to his already mounting legal troubles. Max's physical therapy sessions became the highlight of our weeks, a testament to his resilience, his unwavering spirit. Other dog owners in the neighborhood, those who had previously been silent, intimidated by the HOA's power, would stop by with treats and words of support, a sign of the changing tide, the growing sense of community. Even Mrs. Jackson, who used to complain about every little thing, every minor infraction, brought over homemade dog biscuits, a gesture of kindness, of solidarity. The community was healing, slowly but surely, but not everyone was happy about it. Not everyone was ready to embrace change. Catherine, ever defiant, tried starting a counter-campaign on social media, a desperate attempt to portray herself as the real victim, the one who had been wronged. She posted edited videos of Max barking, carefully curated clips designed to paint him as aggressive, dangerous. But my security footage, the unedited, undeniable truth, showed her deliberately agitating him through the fence, provoking him, a clear pattern of harassment. Her followers, those who had blindly supported her, dropped faster than the neighborhood's plummeting property values, their faith in her shattered by the overwhelming evidence of her cruelty. The most surprising, the most unexpected support came from Catherine's own teenage daughter, Emily. She visited one afternoon, tears streaming down her face, to apologize for her mother's behavior, for the pain and suffering she had caused. She revealed that she had been secretly recording Catherine's HOA meetings for months, disgusted by how they treated people, by their blatant disregard for basic human decency. Emily's evidence, her courageous act of defiance, became crucial for the federal investigation, a key piece in the puzzle of their downfall. Last night, I watched Max play with the neighbor's kids for the first time since the shooting, since that horrific morning that had changed everything. He still limped, a permanent reminder of the violence he'd endured, but his tail wagged with unrestrained joy, his spirit unbroken. A reporter, one of the many who had been camped outside our house, asked me if I would consider dropping the charges if Brenda and Catherine issued a public apology, a genuine expression of remorse. I looked at Max, my loyal companion, remembered the blood staining his fur, the terror in his eyes, the agonizing nights of pain and recovery. Some things, I realized, can't be fixed with a simple sorry. Some wounds run too deep, some betrayals are too profound. The old HOA board's office, once a symbol of their power and control, was empty now, their precious rulebooks, their meticulously crafted regulations, gathering dust, relics of a bygone era. The interim resident council, elected in a landslide victory for reform, had uncovered even more damning evidence. Documents showing how Brenda and Catherine had been funneling HOA fees, residents' hard-earned money, into their personal accounts for years, a blatant act of embezzlement. They thought they were untouchable, invincible in their perfect little kingdom, their gated community of privilege and prejudice. They never expected a congressman, a quiet, unassuming figure, and his three-legged dog, his loyal service animal, to bring it all crashing down, to expose their corruption and cruelty to the world. Tomorrow, Max has another vet checkup, another step in his long, arduous road to recovery. His progress is slow but steady, a testament to his unwavering spirit, his resilience. He's teaching me something new every day about courage, about forgiveness, about the enduring power of love and loyalty. As I sit on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, a breathtaking display of natural beauty, I see Catherine packing boxes into her car, her house finally sold at half her original asking price, a fire sale driven by the relentless tide of public opinion. Sometimes I think karma, that elusive force of cosmic justice, has a way of making things right, of balancing the scales. But as I look at the certified letter on my desk, a formal legal document from Catherine's lawyer, a last-ditch attempt at intimidation, I wonder if this fight is truly over, if their reign of terror has truly ended, or if Catherine, in her desperation, has one last, desperate move planned, one final act of defiance. This story highlights the importance of standing up for what's right, even when facing seemingly insurmountable odds. It demonstrates that even seemingly small acts of cruelty and discrimination can have far-reaching consequences, and that one person, with courage and determination, can make a difference. It also underscores the vital role of service animals and the need to protect the rights of individuals with disabilities. Finally, it serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of holding those in positions of authority accountable for their actions. Have you ever experienced HOA abuse or witnessed discrimination against service animals? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's create a community of support and advocacy. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories that inspire and empower. Your voice matters.